Hello, I'm Mark Baer. You're watching YourTown television. My guest, Neal Hotelling, Pebble Beach historian. And we're going to talk this segment about a couple of the most important events that take place in Pebble Beach during the year. The first is what is known now as the AT&T Pro-Am, but if you live here, it's still always the Crosby. So let's. Where did it begin? How did it happen?
Well, the Crosby has an interesting history that actually began in Rancho Santa Fe, near where Bing Crosby had a golf course and a racetrack. So he loved both sports and started it down there with his friends. He had a lot of friends that played professional golf. He obviously had a lot of friends in the entertainment industry as well, and he thought it would be fun to put it together. It was an era when the PGA was looking for sponsors, and Bing was the sponsor. The purse in 1939, when it started, was about $3,000. And when Sam Snead won the $500 first prize, he turned down the check from Mr. Crosby saying, "I'd rather have cash."
So this is pre-war. Then what happened? What happened with the war and that kind of stopped things down there?
Right. The tournament ran through 42 down there. The last year was January of 42, and then they stopped it because of the war that obviously started with Pearl Harbor in December of 41. And then nothing really happened much with golf during that period. The state amateur was still being played here at Pebble Beach, but the U.S. amateur had been scheduled to come to Pebble Beach in 42, and it was canceled. And it was really kind of a down time. Now, Monterey had the advantage of the sardine industry, which was thriving during the war because the canneries in Norway were closed down. So this became the sardine capital of the world. Unfortunately, it seems that we overfished the sardines and the population died off. So right after the war, the catch in 46 was terrible. And the Chamber of Commerce was getting together to figure out what we can do, what to really drive business, especially in the wintertime because it's slow. How can we get tourism here? And Ted DeRyan, who was the sports editor for the Herald, suggested that they contact Bing about restarting the tournament. And Bing liked the idea.
Had he been up here? Did he know the area?
Yeah, Bing was an active golfer, and he and Bob Hope were both members at Cypress Point Club, so they knew the area. And Bing actually, I'm still trying to track down the truth to the story, but it seems that as part of the incentive that Sam Morse may have given Bing a piece of property on the 13th hole. One way or the other, Bing ended up with a piece of property on the 13th hole where he built his home. And so he and the boys would come up here regularly, and it was a transitional period for him because Dixie was having some health issues. But he remarried and brought Catherine up here, and a whole new set of boys grew up around here as well. So, yeah, Bing had a love for this area, and the big challenges he had was he liked the idea, and he loved the golf courses. But like the state amateur used multiple golf courses, Bing wanted to use multiple golf courses for the Crosby, as long as they're so close together. And
so let me stop you just
Sure.
1 second here. What I want the audience to know is why it's different, because a Pro-Am is not customary.
Yeah,
Okay.
Customarily a Pro-Am, they have a special event where some amateurs get to play with the pros on the day before the actual tournament. Bing Crosby's tournament, the amateurs played all the way through. Not only the first day and the second day, but the last day, the amateurs played through. And when the Crosby started in 47 up here, they actually everybody played the same course every day. So everybody played Monterey. Actually, they played Cypress Point on Thursday, Monterey Peninsula Country Club Dunes course on Friday, Pebble Beach on Saturday, and that was the end of the tournament, 3-day tournament. And it evolved over time. The galleries got bigger. The number of players got bigger. So they eventually split it up, and for a while it was half the field played Monterey on Thursday and half played Cypress Point on Thursday. Then they switched the next day, and then they had a cut, and only the ones who made the cut played Pebble Beach. Well, that left some people off Pebble Beach, so that didn't work out real well. But they eventually moved it to a third. So a third of the group played Cypress Point, a third played Monterey Peninsula, a third played Pebble Beach, and they rotated. And everybody who made the cut then played Pebble Beach for a fourth day on Sunday. So it evolved over time, and the courses changed over time. Cypress Point was replaced by Poppy Hills, and then Spyglass has been active. Then Poppy Hills got replaced about 10 years ago by Monterey Peninsula Country Club, so back to where it started, but with a brand new golf course. Monterey has got 2 top 100 courses now that they've done a lot of work on them. So always great courses. The PGA Tour wasn't sure that was going to work. Bing said it would.
Yeah, and it wasn't a done deal.
The first year was a trial.
Yeah,
it was a trial balloon.
That Bing stood behind his vision.
Yep,
he was a visionary for this.
Yeah, and so they had the first year, and the 2 big issues for the tour were 3 courses they didn't want, amateurs playing all the way through they didn't want. Bing said, "It'll happen. I'm playing. I'm paying. I want it to happen." So they let it try, and it worked really well. So in '47, it was just billed as the Bing Crosby $10,000 Pro-Am, Invitational Pro-Am, because the person grown to 10,000 at that point. And the next year, '48, they billed it as the 7th annual Crosby, and they kept numbering it thereafter. The only problem was they had forgotten that there were 6 tournaments down in Rancho Santa Fe instead of 5, and therefore their numbering was off. And they finally fessed up on the 25th Crosby up here that it was really the 26th, but they said, we're not going to change our numbering. So the numbering continued up through 1987, which was the last year it was the Crosby. It was 85 was the last year of the Crosby, 86 was the first year of the AT&T.
Uh-huh.
And in 1988, it became the AT&T Pebble Beach National Pro-Am, and they stopped numbering.
So again, the appeal of it was Hollywood, and it was the sports.
Yeah.
And the women dressed up. It was very glamorous. If you haven't seen, you can go to YouTube and you can see some of the old Clambake pictures. Yep. and videos. And it was fun, and they goofed around. And I believe, from what my knowledge of it is they had as much fun as it looked.
But yes, party time. It was a big party, and that was what it was all about. Golf was important. The purses were growing, but one of my favorite quotes came from a former golf professional who played in the Rancho Santa Fe tournaments and became a golf writer, and he wrote that, this, I don't know why they call it the Clambake anymore. It used to be fun and a party, and the men would get drunk and chase the pretty girls, but it's not the same anymore. The men are bearing down too much. They're more concerned with the money. And what I love about that is he wrote that in 1953, and they were still partying pretty hardy then.
Yeah.
And they still party today. The purses have gotten a lot bigger now. So first place is $1 million plus. But the wonderful thing about the tournament, and this goes back to Bing as well, is it's always had a charity component. In fact, the first tournament, Bing's favorite charity was the Sister Kenny Foundation, because he had a daughter with an issue. So he designated that the money from the proceeds, he paid all the expenses, so any money from the proceeds went to the Sister Kenny Foundation. And the take was so good for charity that he ended up splitting it. And half of it went to the Sister Kenny Foundation, and half went to support the Boys and Girls Club in Carmel. And the Boys and Girls Club now is a major beneficiary of the tournament, as well as many, many other charities. The tournament now raises several $1 million a year for the local charities.
Yeah, well, then I've been involved with the Boys and Girls Club and the Boys and Girls Club party every year, which has become a big part of it.
Absolutely.
And it's a great thing, and that's one of the great things about our community.
Yeah.
So I know what was in it for the amateurs, but did the pros like it?
Most of them did, and again, most of them enjoyed golf. It's only in the last, I'd argue, in the Tiger Woods era that you've taken your health very seriously when you're a golfer. The golf guys tended to have a lot more fun, and they would eat and drink and socialize, and that was part of the event. In fact, another of my favorite descriptions is of Lawson Little, who was the 1940 U.S. Open champion and had previously been a top amateur. And Bing wrote about him in his autobiography, and he said Lawson Little, his home in Monterey is called Gibson Gulch because he lays in a suitable content and gives it a turn for weeks before the event. And he says he's a good enough player that he could win the tournament on his own if only he would refrain from his own hospitality.
That's funny.
So yeah, it was a different time, and it is a little bit different now. But there's plenty of parties, and it is a social event for the golfers as well as the celebrities, and it's an opportunity for them to thank the people. So there's usually a volunteers party where a lot of the celebrities perform. There's the pros do a lot of different events for the corporate sponsors that are in town, many of the corporate leaders playing in the tournament as well. So it is a business relationship as well as party time.
And Bill Murray, God bless him, he's kept the spirit alive, I think, more than
he has.
More than anybody else I can think of.
Yeah, he kind of decivilized things for a bit. Dancing with the lady in the bunker was a little more than the PGA Tour wanted, but they've come around. The first year he played in '92, he was paired with a young pro, and it was so disturbing that it was hard for him to focus, and the PGA was talking about not bringing him back. And Scott Simpson stepped up and he says, I'll be his partner. And Scott has a very low-key but great sense of humor. You would never know it except when he was paired with Bill. It was a perfect pairing, and they worked together until Scott made it to the Champions Tour. And the first year Scott played at the First Tee Open here, Bill Murray came out and played as an amateur to have that time with his longtime partner.
So the tradition goes on. The next thing that happens here is the biggest car show in the world, the Concours de Elegance.
Indeed.
Again, let's explain what that is because not everybody knows what this means.
Sure. The Pebble Beach Concours de Elegance is when the 18th lawn becomes a parking lot for about $2 billion worth of motor vehicles. And it's just a sight to behold. When I started as golf operations manager in '91, we actually used part of the lawn and turned the 18th hole into a par 3 so we could still play golf. The event has grown even since then to the point that it's the one day a year when we close the golf course completely, because the first hole has events going on, the third hole has events going on, the 17th and 18th, and the 18th is the main show. It probably went to the nth degree the year that we had all 6 Bugatti Royales on the course at the same time. And a Bugatti Royale, they're a unique vehicle. They were built by hand over time. So these are not the same year Bugatti Royale, but they're all built on the same chassis. And they were designed to be able to cruise back in the 20s. They could cruise at well over 100 miles an hour.
Wow! And these are the most beautiful cars in the world. So this is really going to a very high-end art exhibit.
Yes.
If nothing else, I could care less about cars, and this is still magnificent. Yeah. So you were telling me how it started after the war because the men saw the European road races.
Yeah, a lot of the soldiers who had been over in Europe during World War I were quite impressed with these race cars, and many of them brought them back to the U.S. afterwards. And it's like, okay, now what do we do with them? Because we couldn't do road races in the United States like they were doing in Europe, so they worked out a few things with airports, and they'd basically set up a track with cones at an airport, and they'd have their road races, quote unquote, at local airports, some of which had been military bases that had been dismantled. But Sam Morse's son, John, who was also in World War II, was serving in the late 40s as president of the company. And one of Sam's big things is we have to respect the history but look to the future, and we have to always be fresh and new. And John had a couple of friends who had a couple of these sports cars, and they came up with the idea of having the Pebble Beach road races. So the first Pebble Beach road race was here in 1950. and it became a hit. And it got bigger and bigger every year.
So it kind of explains, you're in the Del Monte forest here.
Yep.
And you're in the trees, in these tight, narrow. So I don't know that this happened anywhere else in America, really.
Watkins Glen in New York had road race about the same era, and theirs has actually continued. Pebble Beach, the race really kind of, the start and finish line was by the Equestrian Center, or what's now the Pebble Beach Golf Academy as well, and took off towards the back and looped around tight turns. And it was a challenging road race, about a 1.5 mile track. And they would do 50 laps for the main race.
And then it ended with 57, 56.
56 was the last year it was raced here at Pebble Beach.
Tree.
Yeah.
And that was it. And then it became Laguna Seca. And
right.
Kind of explain how that
worked out. Well, the last road race here was 56, and when the crash hit, the cars had really gotten too big for our little roads. You know, the old sports cars weren't that bad, but the big Ferraris that were coming around in 56, the Corvettes, and it's like, okay, we got to do something else. And Sam Morse, who was good friends with General McClure at Fort Ord, and said, is there a piece of land you can cut loose that we could build a track on? And he did, and that's where Laguna Seca was built. And Laguna Seca's odd shape is because the original shape of the track was based on the road race track here at Pebble Beach. And the first race held at Laguna Seca was called the 1957 Pebble Beach Road Races, which was the last year they called it the Pebble Beach Road Races. But that was how Laguna Seca began.
So last year during COVID, it was canceled, and this year it's going to be back with a vengeance.
That's the plan.
Car Week in August. So it's, you know, the Concours de Elegance is the final Sunday of what has now a 2-week lead up.
Pebble Beach Motor Week, indeed.
And it's
and events all over the peninsula.
All over area, and it keeps getting bigger and bigger, and it's really a spectacle.
Anybody who is anybody in the automotive world is here for that week.
Yeah, and Jay Leno.
Well, he's somebody in the automotive world.
So anyway, a pleasure, and I'm with Neal Hotelling, historian, the man who documented Pebble Beach. Find the books if you can, and pleasure.
Okay, thank you, Mark.
Okay.